Today what we're going to do, we're going to provide some insight on achieving a positive church building experience. We're going to talk about some biblical insight on budget and building. We'll probably refer to a couple of passages. We will talk about the most common mistakes that people make when building. We will talk about the proper planning process, how to develop a master plan, how to develop a budget, how do you procure finance during these economic times, how do you select an architect, and how do you select a contractor. We'll attempt to provide you the skills that will help you articulate your vision into a reality. You know, from a show of hands out there, how many of you know somebody who is planning to build a church? Only a few of you know a few people building a church? Okay, how many of you know somebody who has developed some plans and they never got a chance to actually build that church, and they're kind of like skeletons in their closets? Okay, you have any idea how much some of these plans cost? You know, these plans can cost you into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so what we want to do is kind of show you the way so you won't have that problem. How many of you know somebody who has started a church, who started actually the construction process and wasn't able to finish that process? Anybody know anybody like that? Okay. So what we found out that pastors who have failed to follow sound biblical principles that we will be presenting today, a high percentage of them, of these pastors that have completed a capital stewardship program or a construction project within 2 to 3 years are no longer with that church as a result of not following those sound principles. You know, those proper biblical principles, those will be the models that we will present today that will allow you to benefit. We'll reward your ministry and will allow it to prosper. But putting together the right team is a key to a successful project. And so we have a group of experts up here who will be able to develop the right team. At the end, we have Frank Kendrick, who is the CEO of Nujak Construction. And Frank is a general contractor, and he holds an undergraduate degree in construction management and a master's degree in ministerial leadership. So he offers an interesting perspective on not only the construction process, but the biblical process. He's helped over hundreds of churches and guided them through the successful process of design build. Likewise, he has personally witnessed many devastated pastors who lose hope and give up and cave in and quit, and because they did not fully count the costs. We have Don Lawson, who is the CEO of the Lawson Group. Don is the principal with of the Lawson Group, and he has guided over 235 churches through their comprehensive process of planning, developing, building, renovating facilities, and developing alternate reoccurring revenue streams, opportunities such as church campuses. In 2009 and 2010, his company was recognized as one of the top architectural firms in the Southeast. We also have Gary Pernice. Gary Pernice is the executive manager of commercial funding for Platinum Business Group. Gary holds a bachelor's degree from Oral Roberts University, where he graduated on the Dean's List and magna cum laude. He also holds a Juris Doctorate from Pepperdine University School of Law. Gary has over 26 years of experience working with churches and businesses and providing mortgage and construction funding and legal and real estate transaction assistance, having participated in over 200 real estate closing and hundreds of commercial and residential mortgage transactions. Platinum specializes in churches, ministries, schools, nonprofit organizations, mortgage funding for land, facility construction, acquisition, either through conventional or bond financing. To my left, we have Dan Curtis. He's the principal of the Alpha Group. Dan is recognized as one of the leading financial consultants in long-term care field for many years. He's also been engaged in leasing, acquisition, development, operation, and ownership of senior care facilities. His involvement includes over $100 million in senior financing and development, as well as serving as a consultant to both healthcare providers and government agencies. Dan has a history in with working with churches, and he has developed and financed over 300 churches and 100 senior care facilities in excess of over $500 million in funding. As a matter of fact, Dan was involved in the design and master planning of New Birth Campus in Atlanta. To my far left, we have Dean Banks. Dean Banks is a project developer for W.G. Mills Construction. W.G. Mills was founded in 1972, and they have developed a reputation as an industry leader and a commitment to construction excellence and client satisfaction. W.G. Mills has built over 44 churches, and And Dean has been personally involved in over $2 billion in funding. My name is Tim Jackson. I'm also with Nujak Development. I will be your MC today, and as we guide you through this process. One of the things that we want to talk about is what are the biblical principles relevant in the scripture of how the building process is done. I'd like Frank Kendrick to address that. He has a lot of insight on it.
Sure. Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Bishop for this opportunity to be here presenting to you all. You know, the scriptures, the Bible is filled with all types of principles as it relates to how to build a church. You have Moses and the tabernacle, and you have David in the temple, and Ezra and Nehemiah, and so there are lots of principles in the Bible. But you know, one of the most, I think, fundamental principles in the Bible that really provides a pattern for how do we move forward with a church building project is in Luke, the 14th chapter. And I know, you know, everybody in here has probably heard this scripture before and you preached this scripture. But, you know, it's interesting. Jesus was, you know, there talking about to a group because he noticed that there was a ton of folk that was following him all the time. And so he turned to them and was kind of talking to them about the cost of discipleship. And it's going to cost you something. And, you know, he said, if you come after me, he said, you know, if you don't hate your mother, father, and, you know, hate your wife and your kids and, you know, hate your family and even your own life, you know, you're not worthy to be my disciple. And so that was pretty harsh words. And so he kind of went to kind of expound on it. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, let me put it to you like this. He said, which of you, suppose there was a man that was going to build a tower. He said, wouldn't he first sit down and count the cost to see whether he would have sufficient to finish it? He said, otherwise, when he's laid the foundation and he turns around and not have enough capital and not enough sufficiency to be able to finish it, he said, people walk by and they mock him. And they say, look at this guy. He started something, but he was not able to finish it. And I can tell you, in our experience and working with hundreds of churches, I cannot tell you how many times I've got the phone call, went to a pastor's place, and I say, okay, pastor, so what do you got? And he'll say, wait 1 second, I'll be right with you. And he'll go to the, you know, and open up this closet or pull out this file cabinet, and he pulls out all these plans, and he'll lay them out, and he said, no, not this one. Oh, no, not this one, not that one. And I always ask, I say, Pastor, roughly, how much would you say that you've invested in those plans? And the numbers have ranged anywhere from $20,000 upward to, listen to this, up to $200,000 of sacrificial giving that has been stroked away in a check or series of checks for a building that can't be built. And I always ask the question, I say, well, why didn't you build any of those? And it inevitably, it always goes back to budget. We couldn't afford it. And so this scripture says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. So fundamentally, you have to know what it is that you want to build. Which of you want to build a tower? Which of you want to build a life center? Which of you want to build a sanctuary? Which of you want to build a school or elderly living facility? Or whatever it is that God has placed on your heart. That's the first step, is understanding what it is. He said, will he not first sit down? Now that word sit down is actually two words, but in the Greek it only means one word, and it basically means to sit down and to strategically plan. I think sometimes we put the cart before the horse. Can you imagine how funny that would be to see a cart going down the street and all of a sudden the horse behind it? That would look kind of funny. Well, that inevitably, that's what happens is a pastor wants to build, and the first thing he does is he'll go maybe call an architect.